Hello, everybody, and welcome to the Arsenal Ramble, where today we are celebrating a 4-win victory over Crystal Palace at the Emirates this afternoon. As ever, I'm joined by my co-rambler, Dave. Dave, did you enjoy that?
I did enjoy that massively. Yeah, that's another win for the Arsenal. Another great Sunday. How are you, mate? How are you? You good?
Yeah, I'm really good. It's always a lovely weekend when we get another 3 points on the board, and especially on a weekend where Man City physically can't get another 3 points on the board. I know that means they'll have a game in hand on us, but it's just nice to have that little bit of an edge over them, isn't it?
Oh, definitely. Yeah, it's a psychological boost for the Arsenal. That's for sure.
Yeah. So let's not waste any time then. We'll get right into this game. Talking team sheets, we had an injury to William Saliba midweek, unfortunately, didn't we? So I think it's pretty much the same team sheet as we were all expecting, apart from that Rob Holding actually started this game instead of Saliba. And there was maybe a few question marks over whether Zinchenko might have been able to start just because he did play the full 120 minutes. But as we all know, he's very robust and he's a true athlete, and he managed to start in the starting 11 today.
Yeah. I guess the Saliba one is the biggest change that we're not used to. Um, Part of me, like I said in the previous podcast, was wondering whether this was like a little Arteta masterclass and whether Saliba was actually fit. He was just sort of being precautionary more than anything. But it looks as if he has got a little bit of a back problem that's kept him out today. Um, that looks as if it might keep him out for the international break as well with France. So that is another slight little boost for us to have him fully recovering back at London Colney and hopefully ready to kick on for these last 10 games with the Arsenal, because their partnership is crucial, to be fair. But Rob Holding's coming today, and he's had a bit of a shaky season, to be fair. So I think a lot of Arsenal fans, like me as well, were maybe a little bit apprehensive to see how he would perform today. But we'll come on to his performance a little bit later. But yeah, I think he's probably the biggest talking point. Trossard as well, he did limp off a little bit, I noticed, in that second leg against Sporting. So I was sort of hoping that that wasn't a reoccurrence of that groin injury that kept him out for a few games previously, but it doesn't look like that was the case. So that's another big boost for Arsenal today.
Yeah, yeah, I was definitely a little bit concerned myself about Rob Holding starting this game, just because we know when we play Crystal Palace and the way that we set up, we'll have the likes of Ben White pushing up with Bukayo Saka, which then would leave Rob Holding potentially isolated one-on-one with Wilfried Zaha, who is one of the best attacking players in the Premier League. So that did worry me a little bit, and also players like Odsonne Edouard and Elise as well, all coming from different angles. So there was definitely potential for them to cause us quite a few problems on that side, with Rob Holding coming in quite cold. He's not had many minutes recently, and the ones that he has played, he's not actually played too well. So of course, it's going to be a bit of apprehension from Arsenal fans when he first came in. And rightly or wrongly, in the start of the game, I was watching his every move, his every pass, his movement, his every challenge, just because I wanted to see how he was settling into the team. Were you the same?
I was, to be fair, yeah. I couldn't help but just sort of be a bit fixated on how he was performing. And but what I did notice was he was very strong aerially. What Holding does is he gets very tight to his man, and sometimes that works really, really well, and he'll win all of his duels. Um, and sometimes, as we've seen in the past, he can overcommit and really expose your back line. And we kind of saw a little bit of both of that today. But luckily for us, it was a lot more of dominance aerially. So I think, and obviously we'll come on to this a little bit later, but I think overall, I think Rob Holding had a really, really good game today and deputised for Saliba really, really well.
Yeah, I completely agree. And I think I know what you're on about with the overcommittal side of it as well, because moving into the first half, as we're starting the game, we had quite a lot of pressure. We were playing some nice possession play and creating a few opportunities here and there. And then the ball kind of broke in midfield, and it was like a 50-50 kind of opportunity for someone to win the ball. And in this sort of situation, you'd usually see Saliba back off a little bit, see what they're going to do, and then be able to track and defend if they're going to counter. Whereas Holding, I think he was a little bit too eager to impress and win the ball back. He then overcommitted, dived into the challenge, which the ball then spun out of. And then all of a sudden, you've got Wilfried Zaha running one-on-one against, I think it was Ben White, wasn't it? And in that situation, that's exactly what you don't want to happen is have Wilfried Zaha running down on you. And he actually fashioned a chance for Palace, didn't he? He had a pretty good strike that went off the post, wasn't it? Off the post. And then it hit the back of Ramsdale, went out for a corner. Now, as we saw against Villa, those could have quite easily just bounced and hit the back of Ramsdale and gone in. So, it was a bit of a hot-headed moment from Rob Holding in the first half, wasn't it?
Yeah, I mean, yeah, like you say, you could have easily done an Emmy Martinez there, Ramsdale. So I'm very thankful that wasn't quite the case, because going 1-0 down at that sort of stage of the game is not pretty. And we've seen it in the past this season where, in fact, it was against who's it against Bournemouth, where we went 1-0 down, and it really caused them their low block to it just causes more and more problems, because we knew that even an equaliser was only going to make them play the low block even further, because they're happy with the point. So I'm really, really glad that we didn't go 1-0 behind there, and it was a little bit fortuitous. But like you say, Rob Holding's overcommittal is what cost us there and exposed us a little bit. But it's a strange one, because Saliba, whilst being as tall as Rob and as physically able as Rob, his aerial presence isn't as good as Rob Holding's, I would say. It's Saliba's pace. It just gets him. You can't play behind Saliba because he can match most players' pace. And to have a Saliba and a Gabriel fully fit for the rest of the season is going to be key for us. I think you can use Rob in certain situations, but I wouldn't want to over rely on him for too long, if that makes sense.
Yeah, I think he definitely has a place in this team, Rob Holding. And I think that is when you're trying to defend a lead and you're up against it a little bit and there's balls flying into the box. Because as you say, he's very sound when it comes to his aerial ability. He's probably, I'd say, actually one of the best in the Arsenal squad in being able to defend across. I think there was a moment as well where a ball flew over the top to Wilfried Zaha, and they're starting neck and neck, and then he ended up about 5 or 10 paces behind him, and you just really realised how rapid Saliba is, because we're so used to him just eating up the ground. Whenever you see a ball played in behind, you just see Saliba motoring on, and he is like a Rolls Royce, isn't it? It doesn't even look like he's like breaking a sweat to be able to get there. It's just those long legs just seem to Inspector Gadget him all the way to the ball. So that was a bit of a worry with Rob Holding the first half, but we ended up having quite a few nice opportunities. We had Martinelli getting down the left quite often and breaking past their players, and then we had a phase of sustained pressure where the ball actually came to Ben White. I think, it was Ben White, wasn't it, on the right-hand side? And no, it was, sorry, I was thinking about the second goal. So they tried to play the pass out to Zaha, wasn't it? And then Ben White steps in, wins the ball, which was a superb win of the ball from Ben White. Is very, very much on his toes to get that. And then just a cheeky little through ball to Bukayo Saka, who he's not really in much space at all, but it was a very good pass for Ben White to be able to pick him out there. Saka spins on the ball and he rifles a cross to the far edge of the box, which falls to Martinelli, and it's a little bit behind Martinelli. I thought he's done well to actually gathers the ball, and then scoops it out onto his left foot. The way he does a little body swerve is unreal, because it's underrated how much that really throws a defender off. That he literally does this body swerve on the scoop turn to be able to throw the defender off, make this half yard of space onto his left foot, and then just smashes it home. And that is the finish of someone who's who has no doubt in his ability. Even though he missed that penalty late on Thursday evening, it just shows that he comes straight back in the team and he goes, right, I'll go again and I'll score.
Yeah, you're right. And these are the sorts of goals that you've always seen that are in Martinelli's locker. But so often he'll shoot it too close to the keeper, or it'll just narrowly get saved, and it'll just these little fine margins where they weren't quite going his way. And now we're starting to see a real sort of clinical Martinelli. He's in pretty good form at the minute, which is fair play to him, because when he first came back from the World Cup, he was in a little bit of a rut, and there was a lot of talk about, is Trossard going to replace him in the team? And we've got a Smith Rowe coming back. What does this mean for Martinelli? And he's proved a lot of those doubters wrong, because him and Saka at the minute are just on absolute fire, and we've seen that today with their influence on this game. They were really colossal. But I do have to give a lot of praise to Ben White in this goal, because, like you say, that ability to just nick it off Zaha was brilliant, and I thought he had an absolutely brilliant game. Ben White, all game he was good, both defensively and offensively, and that was good to see, because he's again another player that's had a little bit of a iffy form over the last few months, and he's really starting to prove his worth to this team.
Yeah, absolutely. I think Ben White was probably one of our best performers today, wasn't he? And it just shows you that when he's not been on the team, and we've had the likes of Tomiyasu in the team, it shows you how good Ben White really is when he comes back in and he starts to create these little opportunities. Because yes, Tomiyasu, he gets down the byline, he can whip a cross in, but I think it's just the cuteness of Ben White's. Just he has that kind of automatism wavelength to Saka. He knows exactly where he wants the ball to be played, and he's able to just nick it and go through these little gaps that Saka wants to roll onto. And Saka, being how great he is, he can just protect the ball, gather it, and create a chance from it. But as we saw, I think this partnership of White and Saka has got to be one of the best right-sided partnerships in the Premier League. I'd say pretty much hands down, because I can't think of any other team that's got a better partnership than that on the right-hand side. And to prove that even further, which is why I got confused with our first goal, is they both linked up for our second goal. Now, this was almost kind of carbon copy of Ben White's pass for the first goal. The ball comes across to Saka on the right-hand side, who then plays a nice little 1-2 with Ben White. But the return pass from Ben White was so deft. You just really didn't expect it to actually feed its way through to Saka. And then it leaves Saka in acres of space to be able to find. To be fair, he probably could have had a better finish. Maybe he could have got it in the corner a bit more. My heart was in my mouth thinking the keeper's going to save it, but he just trickles it into the net, doesn't he? And he rolls it past the keeper.
Again, just another clinical finish from Saka, and that's what we're seeing a lot more of this season. I think he's on 12 goals now and 10 assists for the season, which is phenomenal for a player of his age. And you can just see that he's got still so much more development to go, and so much more ability to get even better. So 12 goals, 10 assists seems like, it almost seems like that's just a start. It's going to be, I feel like when he's fully at his peak, he's going to be doubling those figures for both goals and assists with ease. He's just our star player, and again, a really, really well worked finish. And like you mentioned earlier, this this little combination between him and Ben White is key to this team, and it kind of baffles me a little bit how he's been overlooked for the most recent England squad, because Saka is one of the key players for England, and to not have that synergy in the England team seems an absolute waste, especially when you've got players like Kyle Walker, Reece James that's not played a whole heap recently. Yeah, same with Kyle Walker. Trippier, who's not in the best form. It seems a bit strange to me that a player of Ben White's ability that has such great chemistry with Saka wouldn't be chosen for this England team.
Yeah, I think it. Do you reckon it has something to do with the way that he left in the World Cup? Maybe I think that might have something to do with the selection, because it would be difficult to try and justify a reason as to why Ben White wouldn't at least go as part of the squad. Maybe he might not make it as the starting 11 first choice right back, but in terms of right backs in the Premier League and right backs for England, he's got to be up there in the England squad. If they have any footballing brain in there, he would have to be there. But I do think personally, they might have even asked him. You don't know, and he might have said, "No, I'm not interested," because we know what Ben White's like. He he doesn't pull any punches, does he? I'm sure if he didn't want to go and they said, "Do you fancy coming to the England national?" and he would have just been like, "Nah, I'm all right." I can imagine him saying that.
It is a Ben White thing to say, yeah. Maybe it was all sort of kept under wraps, really, wasn't it? The true reasons, but I think it was essentially a falling out with the assistant coach, wasn't it? So yeah, I guess if those bridges have been burnt, then maybe they're so badly burnt that there's no way of coming back for Ben White at the minute. It's hard to say, but for me, if that is the case and it's just a falling out of the assistant coach, it shouldn't affect someone's England career. They should be able to overcome that and move aside whatever the differences were. And because of someone of Ben White's ability, he should be in that England team. And to be honest, is exactly what the England team needs, in my opinion. That back line is one of the weakest areas for England, and he could really secure that up, as well as helping Saka with the fluid movement going forward. So it just seems like an absolute no-brainer to me. But I'm not the England manager, so.
Yeah, that is true. Maybe we can get Saka to do some bridge dowsing to get Ben White back in the team. But to be honest, if he's not being called up and he's not playing, then that's one less player that we have to worry about injury-wise, and especially with Tomiyasu being out for what seems like an extended period of time. We don't want to be risking our only real right back in Ben White going out to international duty. So, if anything, it could be a blessing in disguise, and I'm all for it. If he doesn't go, if Saliba doesn't go, just wrap them all up in cotton wool. I think Partey doesn't want to play for Ghana anymore, so he can stay. that would be great. But I don't think that's going to happen. It seems quite unlikely. But that's pretty much all for the first half of the game. And then we move into the second half, and we're still creating quite a few opportunities, and we didn't really have a hint of anything from Crystal Palace. They didn't really create much at all. And we had a beautiful passage of play. It started off with Zinchenko in midfield, who breaks the lines, takes two or three players out of the game, two or three Crystal Palace midfielders straight out of the game, which goes all the way to Xhaka's feet, who's making a great run, who then pops it off to Trossard, who starts to drive his way to the box, and then he returns it back to Xhaka. An exquisite pass from Trossard, really. It was fed through. It was kind of like the story of our game, to be honest. We had really decent final third passes, which were able to create good opportunities for us to be able to score. So this was one of them, and it went back to Xhaka, who I thought initially he was gonna mess this up, to be honest, because I was having flashbacks to Xhaka being through on goal in the last few games. But he kind of falls into the ball, / pushed into the ball, and he just kind of fumbles the ball into the net. But hey, we'll take it. We're 3-0 up at that point, so exactly, we'll take it.
Yeah, it was quite a fortuitous one again, wasn't it? Really, but yeah, a great run by Xhaka, and like you say, a really really clever ball from Trossard, who again was really really creative today. I noticed Trossard. He's been. I know we've talked about it in previous podcasts, but again, he was so influential today, and having his creativity alongside Odegaard as well. It's just, I remember the days where we were struggling to create chances in 90 minutes. And to be fair, that wasn't all that long ago. But now we've got two players with the ability to create goals in Odegaard and Trossard. It just seems like as long as we've got players that can finish these chances off, we're going to get goals no matter what. And it's just so great to know that, and psychologically as well for the players to also know that, and to just sort of be patient with things. It will come. Whereas before we were very much like, oh, we've had our chance. We probably ain't going to have them anymore. And we've missed it. So, it's psychologically a big boost to have players like Trossard. And yeah, it was a great pass for Xhaka.
Yeah, it seems like we've come a long way from our game plan being pass the ball to Tierney on the left-hand side and let him whip in across to either Lacazette or Aubameyang. And that was it, the horseshoe football of doom. And we've literally got creativity all over the pitch. We've already talked about the chemistry on the right-hand side with Ben White, Saka, and then, as you say, Trossard linking up with Odegaard down the middle, and then you got Martinelli and Zinchenko and Xhaka going on the left-hand side. There's just so much opportunity for us to be able to score and break teams down, which you need against teams that play this low block, which we've come up against quite often this season. But luckily, in the last few games, we've been able to score pretty early so that those teams then have to come out, and then it works to our advantage and we're able to break them down a lot easier. But 3-0 up, we're absolutely cruising. I think we're cruising a little bit too much, that we've kind of took our eye off the ball and we ended up conceding a corner, didn't we? And another set piece, which we've conceded from. Now, this is starting to become a bit of a problem, I think. We can't be conceding from set pieces this often. As we said, we've got Rob Holding in there, so this should be the sort of situation where he would be perfect for. But the ball just drops into the, basically the penalty spot. In fact, no, it was like the 6-yard box. And there was question marks whether the Crystal Palace player fumbled the ball with his hand. I think it does touch his hand, but not enough to say that he's controlling the ball. It would have been harsh if it was ruled out. And then he just finishes it from a few yards out, and pretty easy finish after then.
Yeah, and you're right about the set pieces thing, because we talked about it not long ago, didn't we? And yeah, it's another one we're talking about, and it's really quite frustrating as well for Aaron Ramsdale. I felt for him. We know how much he likes his clean sheets. We saw that in the Amazon documentary, All or Nothing. How fuming he was that time, and this is another case of a game that we really should have seen out and added to his tally, because that would have put him as number one for clean sheets. I would have put him on 13. I think he's level with Pope at the minute on 12. So, I'm glad that we're talking about clean sheets and not losing right now, because it seems insignificant in comparison. But at the same time, it is still a little minor frustration for the back line. And like you say, to concede another set piece, it seems like we need to sort of reevaluate how we're defending, because it's happening time and time again. And these are the margins that can cost you in games, especially in the bigger games, like what we're going to have against City and Liverpool coming up. So hopefully our set piece coach can come up with something different, because whatever we're doing at the minute, it's not working. And yeah, it was just one of those scrappy ones, wasn't it? Really, where no one really got anything clean on it, and just pinball, fumble to Schlupp, and you can't really miss from there, can you?
Yeah, no, you can't miss at all from that. Just well, I'm sure we'd still manage a way to do it. If maybe give it to Jesus and he'd be able to find a way to miss, because that seems to be the only thing to his game that he's not quite perfected just yet. But yeah, unfortunately, we did concede in that moment, and then you feel like the momentum pendulum is starting to swing, and it's really quite frustrating because Crystal Palace in that game, they had literally created that one chance in the first half when it was 0-0, the Zaha chance. And apart from that, they had made literally no effort on goal. They had created nothing. They didn't break us down. And then for us to give away a cheap corner that they ended up scoring from, to then start creating chances. And it's like, what have we done? We've lost concentration in the game. And the worst thing that could happen is you then concede again, and you've got 20 minutes to go, and you're trying to defend the 3 points because potentially you could end up conceding again, and it would be a draw. But what we did see is Palace managed to get in again. I think it was Wilfred Zaha also again. It always seems like whenever we play Palace, it's basically Zaha FC, Zaha plus his mates, because he's the only person that actually tends to create anything. But so Wilfred Zaha got in again on the left-hand side, and he shoots, it goes just wide, and I think that's just at the 70-minute mark. Now, if that goes in, you're talking 3-2, squeaky bum time.
Yeah. Oh yeah, that would have been that probably would have ended in a draw. Let's be honest, because yeah, like you say, squeaky bum time. Can we hold on? Um, it's a lot of pressure and undue pressure as well, because like you say, they didn't create much. Everything they did create was sort of flash in the pan brilliance from Zaha, who, like you say, is their head and shoulders best player by a country mile. And we all know he is an Arsenal fan at the end of the day. He's got this affiliation with Arsenal. He wants to prove a point of why we signed his mate Pepe and not him all them years ago. So he's got that little vendetta, I think, in him. And yeah, he just if anything was going to come from them, it would have been from him, and that was agonizingly close for him, not for us. It was very thankful for us. But like you say, if that had gone in, then squeaky bum time would have commenced.
Yeah, so that would have been the worst thing that could have happened. But then the best thing that could have happened is that we would score again and completely put the nerves to bed. And that's exactly what we did do. This is becoming it's nice that the positive side of what could possibly happen is happening more than the negative side in games now. We're actually riding out the storms and then scoring again. But we did, and it was a brilliant piece of play, really. I think Jesus, who came on, he gathered the ball just outside of the Palace box and dribbled his way in, pops the ball out, and it's a bit of a pinball. And the Palace player tries to clear it out to Kieran Tierney, who then just checks himself whilst all of the Palace defenders are running into the box. He notices that Bukayo Saka's on the edge of the box and just he picks them out. Really, it's a very smart delivery from Tierney. It's very he definitely meant that. He meant to pick him out. And Saka, what a finish! Unbelievable finish. It's quite an underrated finish as well. To be able to get that in the bottom corner. Question marks over whether Jesus was in the eye line of the goalkeeper. However, I don't really think he was, to be honest. It's he's stood in an offside position. He potentially might have been in the eye line a little bit, but let's not chalk that off for Bukayo Saka, please.
Yeah, that's what I was thinking as well. Even though it didn't seem to have too much of an impact on the scoreline, yeah, I just wanted Saka to get his second of the day. And yeah, if they would have chalked that off, I probably would have been understanding of it. I could see where they were coming from. But for me, the keeper was already going for it once it was struck by Saka. And, for me, that basically means he knows the ball's been shot. He's not been impeded. He's seen the ball being struck by Saka and he's gone for it. So no offside. And I'm going to stick with that. But yeah, on another day, that could have easily, potentially have been given offside. So thankful that one didn't get chalked off, because it was a great pick out from Tierney, and I think I could see that he had a little bit of a point to prove. When he came on, uh, he didn't have many minutes, obviously, to do that. And he was also playing a very sort of unconventional back line of um, Gabriel, Kivior. No, sorry, it was Kivior, Holding, and even Partey at right back at one point. It was sort of all over the place. So, the fact that he could have an influence on the game. He was even playing centre back at one point. I saw, like, when they passed it out from the back, they put Gabriel on the far left. So, he was playing very out of normal circumstances. So, yeah, I think he did really well.
Yeah, it's quite interesting to see the development of Arteta as a manager, where he initially wanted to play 11 players and not change them at all, maybe not even make a sub all game, to playing as many players as he can in one game and put them all in as many positions as he possibly can. It's quite interesting to see. But yeah, I was really happy for Tierney's little cameo in this game. I thought for him to come out of it with an assist and with a good account for his performance as well was really quite nice, because he's a fan favourite. Everybody loves Tierney. And yes, Zinchenko's come into the fold and he's been outstanding, even for the first goal that we saw. Not the first goal, Xhaka's goal, sorry. He was integral in breaking the lines, and that's the sort of pass that we wouldn't have seen Tierney make, that kind of 30-yarder into Xhaka's feet. So you can understand why Zinchenko's been picked over Tierney, but we all love to see him. He's a conventional left back, and he has got a good delivery. He's not actually that bad at that side of the game. We just think of him as so much more of a runner. And boy, is he a runner. There was a opportunity that Palace actually had after Tierney came on. I think it was Elise who was breaking the lines, and he was basically through on goal. And you just saw Tierney absolutely motoring, speed demon past Elise, wins the ball, and then calm and collected recycles it, and we managed to get it away. And I think in that one little microcosm opportunity there, it's an example of where Tierney is a lot better than Zinchenko defensively. He's a lot more assured of being able to win the ball back, which definitely has merit in our squad. And I think there is a place for Tierney in this team, isn't there?
Yeah, I think so. I think a lot of fans are sort of calling for him to be sold in the summer. And I can understand both sides of the coin, because he's at a time where he's not in the team. He's still got X amount of years on his contract, and his value is at the maximum it could be at this stage of time. If we left it another year, for example, he's another year without much game time. His value is going to be much less. Put it that way. So a lot of Arsenal fans are thinking, is this time to move Tierney on? I guess it's sort of dependent on the fee, really, if or who would come in for him. Because if it's Newcastle, like the reports say, do we really want to be strengthening a team that could be fighting for top four next season? I'm not too sure on that. We've seen how detrimental it's been, City giving us Zinchenko and Jesus. Could it have sort of elements of that potentially? Personally, I hope we keep Tierney. It's just whether Tierney is happy playing this role in this team, and it's a hard one to say, because personally, I don't think he probably is, because he's a brilliant player. He's just not doing what Zinchenko has been doing for Arsenal, which has been so good. And it's a case of, could he do what Zinchenko's doing? And I don't think many people would say he probably can. He has got other strengths that Zinchenko doesn't have, like you say, his pace and his one-on-one tackling ability. But at the same time, I don't think Zinchenko's is that bad that it's too much of an issue. Zinchenko doesn't tend to lunge into tackles. He sort of waits for them to make his move, wait for the opposition to make their move, then goes in for the tackle. And to be honest, nine times out of 10, it comes off, and he defends well. So it's a tough one, but I just hope that somehow we can incorporate both of them into this team, especially with Champions League football coming up, and it could be a real strength to have both of those players in this squad.
Yeah, I think for Tierney, if he was assured that he was definitely the second choice left back in this squad, then he would have been happy with that, especially this season. However, I think what has happened, which is kind of why this sparked so much interest from different clubs, is the fact that Zinchenko's not been injured much at all. He's pretty much played as much as he's been fit. And then the very few times that Zinchenko has actually been injured, we've brought Tomiyasu in at left back, who's usually the conventional right back replacement. So I think that's been the kick in the teeth for Tierney, because he's thinking, well, if I'm not even second choice, then what the hell am I doing here, kind of thing. I should be playing first choice. But if that wasn't the case, and for example, next season, we're going to be challenging on all fronts. We're going to have 4 different competitions, 2 being massive Premier competitions, the Premier League and the Champions League. And then also you've got the FA Cup and the League Cup as well, which we went out of pretty much every competition apart from the Europa League really early this season. And then the Europa League, not even too far into the competition, we went out. So these are all extra games that Tierney would have definitely been played in. And next season, he would be really useful for those games. But as you say, if he's being replaced by Tomiyasu when Zinchenko is not in the team, then I think unless he really picks up his form and he plays a lot more matches towards the end of this season and really stakes a claim in the first team, I do think he might be on his way out, which is unfortunate, but that's just football, I guess. You can't keep everyone.
You can't, no. And to be honest, I'm kind of glad that we're in this position now where we've got players that are worth this value and that we can command big fees for them, because we haven't been in this position for a very long time. And yeah, it will be sad to see someone of Tierney's magnitude leave this club. Like you say, he's a fan favourite. But if this is the time and we can replace him with someone more suited to the way we play, then I'm all for it personally. And it's just whether that recruitment can be found. But maybe, like you say, we've got Tomiyasu that deputises pretty well at left back. We saw it in the Liverpool game this season, how he had Salah in his back pocket all game, and he's got that in his locker. Maybe it's a case of strengthening the right hand side a bit more. I know we were linked with players over the January window, like Ivan Frisneda, for example, a young player with the profile of a Ben White. So it kind of makes sense that that would work. We'd have the 2 players on the right, 2 players on the left, and maybe that is sort of a hint towards a potential Tierney exit. But if we can get and command a decent fee for him and reinvest that into the squad where it's better needed, then that's just part of football, isn't it?
Yeah, exactly. Players got to move on, and that's just the way it is, isn't it? Bit of a side note on the game. So I was half expecting when Saka had his goal celebrations that he would run to the corner flag, whip out his phone, and FaceTime Kim Kardashian. And I was a bit disappointed that didn't happen.
or Margot Robbie with Martinelli. I've also seen. She seems to be a big fan of his. All the celebrity A-listers are in for our wingers, it seems.
It just shows you that they're really reaching that superstardom kind of category, aren't they? They've gone from being these youth prodigies to being worldwide known superstars, because Arsenal is a worldwide brand. These are the best players that play for Arsenal, so everyone's going to know who they are. And it must be mind-boggling for like a little kid from London like Saka, who's he's gone through the ranks, he's playing for Arsenal, it's his home team, and everything seems quite local, to then be getting FaceTimes from people like Kim Kardashian, who would have no kind of affiliation with football at all. And it's like, wow, the reach that these players have got and the reach that this club has got, it's incredible, isn't it?
It is, yeah, and it just seems like this is Saka's. Like, I know he broke into our team 3 years ago now, but this seems to be his season where he's really he's hitting the heights of, he's going to be one of the best players in the world, and he's already well on his way to that, getting there. He's already on his way to world class level, and yeah, and with that comes that sort of superstardom. He'll be in a Gillette advert soon enough. Let's be honest.
I was going to say, well, he's got to grow some facial hair first to be able to be in that. He's got a little tuft coming though, hasn't he? He's got a little tuft on the chin. I've noticed a bit of a Billy Goat scruff. Maybe he's trying to follow in Saliba's footsteps. But it's really good to see the boys. It's nice to see that they're all really happy as well in doing what they're doing. They've all got their arms around each other. And even like, as you say, we talked about Tierney earlier, he got an assist and Saka went straight over and congratulated Tierney for getting the assist kind of thing. That's just the way that this team is, the way that they're all bonding together. But we're sat 8 points clear of Man City. I know they didn't play. We're 19 points clear of Man United. How amazing is that? And also, let's just mention, because it's worth giving a mention, to Tottenham Hotspur and Antonio Conte. Did you see that? Did you catch all the interviews that Conte gave post-match?
Yeah, I listened to it in full because it was just like pure comedy, really, wasn't it? Who would have thought that would ever have happened? Just seemed written in the stars, really, didn't it? That fallout would eventually happen. And I'm surprised he hasn't been sacked yet, to be honest. Imagine an Arsenal manager like absolutely slating the club in that fashion, and still being in post. I can't believe he would have the audacity to say some of those things. It's all true. I mean, it's all true, but to say that sort of stuff is mental. And yeah, I guess the roller coaster of Tottenham managers will commence with somebody new, if not this week, at the end of the season, because there's no chance he's staying on for any more than his contract length, is there?
No, I think, is there a side of it where if he does get sacked, then they basically have to give him a big payout? Because I'm pretty sure like they'd have to pay him the rest of his contract to be able to leave. Now, I think that's kind of clever business by Conte, because he's like, I don't want to be here anymore, and if they don't want me, I'll just perform badly, and then they'll have to pay me off, kind of thing. Which, it's funny to watch, and it's funny to see them implode. And it really doesn't look too bright for Spurs. They had a short-termism coach in Conte. No one ever expects Conte to be more than 2 or 3 seasons. He did it at Chelsea. He left. Milan left. He's not that sort of guy. He's not going to go through a whole rebuild and take your team to the next level. He's just not that kind of progressive manager. Which is why before we got Arteta, everyone was crying out for Conte, saying, "Oh, let's get Conte, and he'll give us instant success. He'll get us back into the Champions League or whatever." And it's like, yeah, maybe for 1 season or 2 seasons, and then he would have jumped ship. He would have dipped, and then we would have been left at square one again. And that's just not what we wanted. And I'm so glad we went the long route round, had a couple of 8th place, and then Mikel Arteta was able to completely rebuild this team in his own image, which essentially is why we're having this relative success that we are now. So, yeah, it's hilarious to see. And it is quite funny to see that he quite clearly mentioned Levy, didn't he? Saying that since he's been the owner, so 20 years or so, they've not won a trophy. What does that tell you? They're not spending any money. They're not giving us any allowances. And it's just funny to see them actually hit some home truths. And where do Spurs go when Harry Kane leaves? Because I genuinely cannot see how their team is going to progress from there. And honestly, I don't care for a start, but it's just nice to see that in the next few years, we might not have any contender with them in terms of finishing in the top 4.
Where do they go? I mean, just further and further down the table, to be honest. I mean, I think they've been absolutely blessed with having a player of Harry Kane's ability over the last decade or so. Um, and yeah, I mean, I can't see many players like that ever wanting to join Tottenham, really. I think they're incredibly lucky to keep him. I don't understand how they've managed to have him for so long. Um, but I also find it really funny that you remember that time we played um, Spurs, and I think I think it was 2 seasons ago we lost, and after the game, Conte came out saying, "Oh, Arteta, he needs to learn to not complain so much." And sort of was ridiculing us in that fashion. And now, like a year later, or however long it's been, all he's doing is moaning about the owner of Tottenham, and ultimately, like they spent a lot of money. They spent like 60 million on Richarlison. They spent all that money on Basuma. A lot of people were tipping them to have won the transfer window in the summer, and a lot of those players would have been heavily sort of requested or at least influenced by Conte's choice of player that he would want in the team. So to come out now and start complaining about it when you can't get the best out of your players, it just seems absolutely ludicrous. It's so hypocritical, especially with the stuff that you were saying about Arteta. And like you say, I'm so
Yeah.
glad that we didn't go for a short-term manager in Conte. We went for the long term, and now we're reaping the rewards.
Yeah. Yeah, and I hope they drop like a stone down the table and hit Chelsea on the way down as well, because obviously they're having a bit of a stinker as well. Both of those teams ended up drawing yesterday, which was absolutely hilarious to bottom half teams, which is just great to see. But we'll briefly touch as well on the crazy events that happened in the Manchester United versus Fulham game that happened this afternoon. Now, 3 red cards and 2 goals from Man United as well in the space of 5 minutes. Did you catch that?
I did actually, yeah. It was just a bit chaos. I didn't know who was getting sent off or what. The camera didn't seem to know either because they were just panning left, right, and centre. Um, yeah, it was. Well, it was essentially a handball, wasn't it, by Willian on the line that kept the Sancho shot out, which for me was a handball. So it goes to a VAR decision because the referee on field didn't quite catch it. He sees it on the monitor. He gives the penalty. He gives the red card to William. Mitrovic then runs over to the referee, absolutely outraged, and starts like nudging him a little bit. Which, like it was aggressive, but we've seen it in the past. I think Bruno Fernandes has been guilty of that as well. And he's got nothing. But you can't nudge a referee like that, let's be honest. So he's then got sent off. And then the manager, in the chaos of all this, has also got sent off with his outrage at the whole thing. All for something that was probably the correct decision. I mean, it was a handball at the end of the day. So yeah, down to 9 men. Can you hold on to a 1-1? But even if you can do that, you've still got to play extra time with 9 men. It's not looking great for Fulham, but then they concede almost straight away. So yeah, it was just absolute chaos, but very entertaining. I enjoyed it.
Yeah, good to watch as a mutual, wasn't it? But yeah, that's it's not what we know Willian for is goalkeeping prowess. But yeah, just thought I'd add that in there. But so we're going to have an international break now. Is there anything else that you wanted to touch on from today's game at all?
I guess the only thing I wanted to say was just how great it was to see Martinelli bounce back from his sort of penalty miss in the Sporting game and sort of bounce back with a really positive performance. Obviously, got his goal to kickstart today's win. The important first goal. He had a really good display. So I'm glad that doesn't seem to have affected him too much. And yeah, just happy for him.
Yeah, and I would like to add as well that although we were both quite worried about Rob Holding and he had a few deficiencies during the game, overall he played pretty well, and I feel like he deputised for Saliba quite well. So it's nice to see that we've got someone that is at least competent to be able to come in and put in a performance, get 3 points, and then if he needs to then sit on the bench for another 2 or 3 months, then that's great, because then he can come in and come on as and when he's needed. So yeah, really happy with that. So yeah, as I said, we've got an international break. Hopefully none of our players get injured. And then following that, we will be playing Leeds United on none other than April Fool's Day. So hopefully we don't get pranked on that day, and we can come out with 3 points and still be on top of the table, whilst Man City have to play Liverpool. So there is real potential that we could actually extend the gap from 8 points to 11 points. Now that is mouth-watering. So it's been great to talk to you guys. We will see you next time. If you want to follow us on Twitter, it's at Arsenal Ramble _ and on YouTube, it's the Arsenal Ramble. Catch you next time.
Take care, guys. Bye.